Hello everyone and welcome to another video, and today we are going to be talking about the Dark Esper trial, but more importantly something that was kind of dug up that we didn't know about, continue to not really know about, and we wouldn't know about it without the wonderful people at the I believe it's the Exvius database. Those guys do a lot of hard work data mining a lot of stuff for us, so I want to say thank you to them at the start of this video. But really, it came up in the Dark Esper trial, the new one, not the old one, the one with Golem and Shiva. First of all, I think that trial is pretty cool. One, it actually has some really decent rewards between the armor and the hat. I don't have enough stamina to show it, so don't worry about it. The point is it has some really nice equipment to it, it has some cool mechanics to it, but it had one mechanic that we did not know about, and that mechanic has been uncovered by the use of data mining, and that is basically the idea that enemies are starting to get stat passives now. And this is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it potentially gives Alum a new tool for making Esper trials or any trials more difficult by the fact that the stat passives do actually make enemies considerably stronger. So in the case of Dark Shiva, she has a 2000 spirit stat. Pretty bad. Although you would consider the fact that if you just broke it, because you cannot break her for defense, she has a defense break immunity, but you can break her for spirit. So heck, if you had a 74% spirit break off of Orin or Lorraine's limit burst, then 2000 spirit really isn't that much of a problem. Or at least you would think that, until you find out that she does have a 30% stat passive boost. And what this means is that it actually gives her a 2600 spirit. And, 2600, that's a considerably higher amount than we had thought it was originally from the data mine. And the other thing is that, well, the 600 extra spirit can't be broken since it's a passive and it cannot be dispelled, meaning that your passives from breaking, these passives could be a big problem in the future. They also could be something really interesting. So I have some different thoughts about it, and I'm just here to talk about it today. First of all, the fact that you can't dispel it is kind of cheap, and the fact that it hasn't been talked about feels really shitty, considering that Alum recently put an update out there that was basically supposed to be transparency. In other words, so in the game now, you have the ability to, well, let's just go in and check real quick. And yes, I know my arena orbs are full. Doesn't really matter that much. So let's take Lid, for example, since we're talking about buffers or debuffers, and I'm sorry that I'm coughing, I'm still a little bit sick. Anyway, here we can see all kinds of details about Lid's abilities, her moves, everything by just clicking on it, and that's really, 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 really quite nice. So here's the thing. That 600% or that 600 extra spirit on Dark Shiva cannot be removed by any method in the game, meaning that no matter what, Shiva will always have at least 600 spirit. And that's if there was a 100% debuff in the game for the spirit stat, which doesn't exist. But it does make it a little bit more challenging to not just bring mages that could, just kill Shiva with magic. If you could just debuff her 2000 spirit with almost 80%, then she wouldn't have much spirit left and magic would still be an option. So, again, my problem here is that Alum passed something to make the game more transparent, then put something in the game to make it less transparent. And to be fair, you can't see bosses' stats. You can see their HP and MP, what they are weak to, and if they have any status immunities. Haha, like we'll ever see really many bosses with that we can use status effects on, which is always kind of annoying to me because it's like, well, status effects are really just against us. They're, one of the things I liked about Final Fantasy 13 back in the day is some of the bosses' poison was necessary and a really good strategy to use against some of the bosses. Heck, I think even in Final Fantasy 12 it was a option of something you could do. And that's really cool to be able to use status effects against certain bosses, not all bosses, but hey, something that would give you a specific chance or, use some kind of neat mechanic where it's like, well, every 4 turns the boss will use a massive attack, but you can only paralyze him once every 5 turns. So you have to think about, your timing and everything and all of that. That's an interesting strategic way to make a boss battle. Hiding stuff that we did not know about and actually cannot be broken or removed feels a lot worse. And the other reason is because if you consider what this means, basically, it means that 600 extra spirit on Shiva cannot be gotten rid of. The real problem here is, well, with that 30% boost, your 70% breaks are actually around 50-ish percent. 53.84 according to the work that has been done by exviuswiki, but still, that's really, really annoying. And apparently, Watcher Welter, another one of the more, which was the end of the 12 equipment trial bosses, apparently he also had this too. Dark Shiva and Golem have a 30% passive, Watcher Welter had a 50% passive. And what that means is that all of our breaks are not what they are being advertised. And kinda is the only word I can use here because Alum's not technically lying when they're giving us this transparency. Lid's break is a 79% on pretty much all enemies. But then you find out that it's not the case on certain enemies, and this could be just a trend going forward with every single trial boss. But if that's the case, then what we're getting with our units, what we're getting with Orin and everything, guess what, guys? I know you guys all got really excited. Well, a lot of people got really excited about, yeah, Orin's a free-to-play Lorraine. You don't need to spend money to get Orn. Well, you kind of do. It depends on your luck. But, yeah, 74% break on his limit burst. And it turns out, no, that's not the case at all. These 30% passives actually make all of your breaks much worse than advertised. And it makes breakers kind of bad, or at least worse. But really, it has me more worried about Brave Exvius's future, because the thing about Brave Exvius in particular is that, and with this, it's like, what's from stopping them from putting eventually a 100% boost or a 200% boost? And breakers just become less optional and more mandatory. Is that good for the game? Is that good for challenges? Is that good for trials? It's probably not good for free-to-players who have mediocre buffers or less quality buffers, because if they have 100% passives ever, that means they could put out 100% breaker. And 100% breaker would be like a really big deal until you consider the fact that no, it's just necessary. If you want to do the harder content, you have to have this unit. And there's no reason they couldn't stop that and put that on a higher rarity unit in the future. Again, tinfoily hatty, I know, but this is Alum, and Alum is trying to keep this game going by whatever means they can. And this really depends a lot on how it's handled, because the stats we originally thought we were getting, those aren't the stats at all, and it makes new trials considerably more difficult. And the fact is, you only have 5 party spots, so you have to sacrifice something. The trials are designed to be built. They are designed to be burst down, although they are trying to make that very, very difficult for one-turn, OTKs, which, honestly, why are you building trials for whales? I guess it's to keep them interested, but most of the whales just beat this in a day anyway and then stop. So it's like, honestly, you'd be better having just more interesting mechanics and more complex boss fights rather than just statting the crap out of them, which is just boring, where it's like, well, it's another boss. It's another trial boss. We already know we can't do any status effects to it. What's its weakness? Okay. All right, CG or Jet. Team Go because it has lower defense, or Ellie if it has lower magic resistance, and just go beat it. All right, well, what's the next thing? And that's really seems boring and working. Maybe a combination of both, but it's definitely I don't really know how to feel about this. On one thing, it could be smart design. It could work out perfectly fine. It could also be leading us down a really bad path for many different people. And I think it's important to know for people who are trying to pull hard for Orin or trying to get Lorraine or trying to get CG Lid that debuffers aren't that thing. And what we thought they were. And the other thing is that 50% is really bad now against new trials. You cannot use that and expect to have much survivability anymore, because a 70% break gets dropped down to 53, which means a 50% break gets dropped down very much lower, and that is tough. That is really tough for trying to get 18 to survive. So it does opens some possibilities for what future debuffers might be able to become. It also potentially sends us down a path of being like, well, you don't have a debuffer, you can't do trials because you need these debuffs constantly active if you want to survive. And the other thing is, like, some of the other dirty tricks that have been recently employed in trials is, debuffing for a absolutely far too massive amount of elemental resistance too, where Alexander hits for a 300% holy debuff, and he can do it multiple turns in a row. At least from what I've seen in trials, he's done it multiple turns. And really, why don't we have something against that at this point? If you're going to put that in, the only real way is you can cheat out the game by dispelling your own party, which I found out recently, which, it never really made too much sense to me why dispel couldn't be used on your own party. Descriptions aside, whatever. Anyway, so this is something that you should be aware of, global people especially. When you're pulling for these amazing breaker units, eventually it turns out that breaking is either going to be very mandatory and you're going to need these units, or it's not going to be mandatory because you're just not getting what's advertised anymore. And that's the bad thing. That's the bad thing. Whenever Alum now says something about, look, we have an attacker with a high percentage attack, or a defender who can do 80%, and it's like, is it really 80% anymore? Maybe you should put an asterisk beside all of these numbers or any of your statements that say, unless you're doing one of the hard trials, then you're probably getting less value. It's sleazy, it's underhanded, it doesn't feel very good, and I guess I would be more okay with it if Alum had just come out and said that they were doing this. But they didn't. They hid it from us. And that's the thing that makes me really worried, is that Alum's still doing some underhanded things. And really, definitely think about what you want to invest in this game in the future. Because this kind of stuff is really what might hurt the game's longevity in the long run. So, some interesting information for you guys. Definitely keep it in mind. Any trials going forward in the future, you can possibly expect this kind of crap. So, yeah, that's my opinions on it. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you all in the next video. And by the way, very little coughing in this video. Feels almost okay. All right, see you later.